Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate breakdown for Friday, July 28th. We had a very little slate yesterday. It was a fun one though, but with it being so small, I'm not going to go into the full slate review that we normally would. We'll go over the perfect lineups quickly, just not go over the winners. And then we will get into the normal. We'll go to pitchers, go to stacks, end it up with a good weekend, and hopefully all of us winning some money. So before we get into it, make sure to come join us at LineStar. $29.99 gets you access to all of our props, all of our DFS stuff. It's really a great tool. It is all encompassing. You don't really need any other tools. Everything else you can find for free if you need it on to play DFS or to prop bet. So I think you should really come join us and take advantage. And as always, drop us a like on our videos. Comment helps feed the algos. So let's get into those perfect lineups. So the one thing we kind of were harping on yesterday is you needed to get a little bit different. Taylor Beebe was the highest owned FanDuel, the highest scoring FanDuel pitcher here. 9,600 for him, scoring 39 points. Got it done to be in the perfect lineup, and he wasn't that high owned on FanDuel, so it was a very interesting one. And the Cleveland Guardians and Cubs just got it done yesterday, so very interesting slate. Also, I got to bring this up. Andrew Kitzner showing up in the perfect lineup here, but he didn't even start the game. Contreras got hurt in the first inning, so nobody played Kitzner unless they just made a mistake and never swapped off a lineup that they made earlier in the day. So that's this won't normally happen, but it absolutely did yesterday, and on a 3-game slate, it really came through, but nobody played him. So, and then Berger just went nuts. 2 home runs for the young man. All right, on DK, Steele, BB, Kitzner showed up again. We got a couple Cleveland guys, couple Cubs guys, and then 2 Cardinals as well. So with Kitzner, which we already talked about, really interesting lineups. And that's the thing, is that it's, what's here in the perfect lineup was not the guys that everybody thought was going to go. Cubs and Washington were the lower owned stacks in the games everybody was focusing on. And then the Guardians just was a game that Guardians versus White Sox game was one where pitching was getting focused on a little bit more. So, 3-game slate, and it really paid to get a little different. And some people took it down because of that. Now, let's get into the fun. We got a major, big-time 14-game slate today. One of the things we need to get out of the way first is Baltimore, Pittsburgh, even the Mets and Atlanta all, I believe, have some sort of showers or something in the mix. I don't believe there's going to be too much issue here. Oh, I think White Sox also, but this is a situation where the storms roll in really late. If they come in a little early, it could end the game early. I don't think there's going to be much of an issue in New York. Both Pittsburgh and Baltimore, there definitely is an issue. So just make sure you pay attention later in the day. I think both are going to play, but, there is definitely a chance they don't. So make sure you pay attention to that. All right, now ownership-wise, Kevin Gausman, highest owned pitcher, 38%. He's versus the Angels. We do know Shohei Ohtani left during the game yesterday. It was supposedly due to cramping. But if he's out of the lineup, you got to like Gausman a little bit more. But Gausman's just been absolutely electric all season long. His high games are, some marvelous pitching expeditions, and if he's on one of those, you're going to really want him. But this Angels team has been quietly kind of hitting pretty well lately. 220 ISO versus righties, almost 350 WOBA. They hit righties very well. They do strike out a lot, but this is a tough matchup here on both sides. One, Gausman's got a tough matchup, and the Angels obviously have a very tough matchup. But Gausman, 33% K rate, 2.7 FIP. This guy has been absolutely spectacular. So I think you absolutely do need to consider him. Just also realize that he's going against a very good team. There's 14 games on the slate, so 27 other pitchers to consider, and 38% owned is extremely high owned. So next, we got Zach Wheeler coming in, 9,800 versus Pittsburgh. Now, personally, I like this spot a little bit more than Gausman. He's less owned, and I think there's just as much K upside here because Pittsburgh's striking out at 29%. They are decent versus righties, but they aren't as good of an offense as the Angels. And Wheeler's been good, 2.78 FIP, striking out 27%. He's been good recently. His StatCast data is good. Combined K rate 27%. I think there's a lot to like about Wheeler today. Next, we got Scherzer. Man, what to think with Scherzer? So one, he's facing the Nationals, who don't strike out much. 17% K rate. But Scherzer's been a lot better at home. 30% more fantasy points at home. However, Scherzer does allow a lot of home runs. 54% fly balls, 31% hard contact. It's really good hitting weather. The wind is going out. It's not far-fetched to say that he's going to give up, 3-4 earned runs here. Like, he hasn't been great lately. 6.19 FIP over his last 5. A FIP of 5 over his last 20. He just hasn't been Scherzer-like. So I don't think you need to chase ownership here. I absolutely think you can play him, and he has been very good against the Nationals in the past. 78 plate attempts, 188 average, 27% K rate. But all things considered, if ownership is really here, it might be a spot that I'm going to stay away from. I can show you this data, and I can literally paint a picture of why he looks great and a picture of why he looks terrible. So this is one where you really need to go with your own judgment. I personally probably won't really be playing Scherzer. Next, we got Bobby Miller, 7,700. One thing I have to talk about right off the top is his line in sportsbooks right now is like 6.5 Ks. That's a pretty high line for a guy at 7,700. So I think with that alone, you need to consider him. The other thing is Cincinnati is a good offense. Miller's been decent. That 6.5 line does not support his 23% K rate. Personally, I think that line is a little bit high, but it does make me consider Miller more than I was prior. I think, maybe there's something that I'm not seeing that is making sportsbooks do that. But he's in a great spot. He's at home. Dodgers have a good offense behind him. His pitching matchup versus Williamson, Williamson doesn't scare me whatsoever. So I think it's a game where the Dodgers should likely win. Bobby Miller has a good chance of getting a win, and there's some strikeout upside. So I got to consider him at 7,700. Logan Webb's coming in next. Look, this Boston offense hits righties really, really well, and Webb doesn't have huge K upside, so I'm a little worried about this. The one thing, though, is that it is in San Francisco, so, you have that on his side. One, he's averaging 31% more fantasy points at home. Two, Boston, that offense is not in Fenway, which is a very good hitting offense. Now they're going to a very good pitching park. So I think it's, okay if you want to play Webb. I'm probably not there. I just don't know if that upside's there. And the LineStar community is pretty split on it as well. So think it is interesting here. Next, we got Joe Musgrove versus the Rangers. Look, Musgrove's been pitching great lately, so I think you absolutely have to consider him. When he was on a tear last year, he was almost unhittable, and he's kind of in that form right now. So I think you can absolutely consider Musgrove as a lower-owned option. Our projection doesn't totally love him at his price point here. Just that Rangers offense is very good, but we are in pitcher friendly. Petco, Joe's at home. I think it is a spot you can consider. And he has been good versus Texas, although a very small sample size. Next, we got Garrett Cole versus the Orioles. Like I said, there could be weather in this game, so if you want Cole, make sure there's not going to be any delays in the game, or at least delays are unlikely. Obviously, you don't want to pay $11K and have your pitcher leave after 3 innings because there's an hour rain delay or something like that. But, he's in an okay spot. He's versus Baltimore. The one thing I would say is 98 plate attempts. K rate against them is only 23.5%. And that's just not worth it at $11K. So while Cole is a solid pitcher, I don't love it. And I think his price point is just a little bit too high today versus a very good offense in very good hitting conditions. It's warm in Baltimore. The winds are blowing out. Mackenzie Gore versus the Mets. Gore's been decent lately. It's 7,300 and a 26% combined K rate. He is absolutely in consideration, even against a decent Mets offense. And if you watch that Mets versus Nationals game yesterday, neither of these teams wanted to hit whatsoever. So, and I would say pitching today is better than it was yesterday in this game. So I don't know if I can really get behind either of these offenses, which means either pitcher's, kind of in play here. Grayson Rodriguez. All right, I talked about him on the props show a little bit. He definitely made some adjustments from when he got sent down to the minors midseason and came back up. His arm slot changed a little bit. He also has changed his pitch mix a little bit, and he's getting way more whiffs on his fastball, literally almost double what he was getting prior to him going down. So if this is for real, I think you really need to consider Grayson Rodriguez, especially at 6,300. This is a thing where the projection systems won't really pick it up because it's only been a 2-game sample size, to really go off. But it definitely seems like he has made some solid changes to make him be, the prospect that he's been expected to be. He is a top prospect. Start the year, he was kind of meh, but look, he just came back. He faced the Dodgers and Tampa Bay, was striking out, one batter an inning pretty much here, and gave up 6 runs in 10.2 innings, but that's 6 runs against 2 of the best offenses in the league. So I think you absolutely have to consider Grayson Rodriguez. One thing, though, that I do need to bring up is that Judge will be back in the Yankees lineup. So that is obviously a very big negative for him. But 6,300 makes me very interested. Christian Javier, guy just has not had it this year. I love the upside, but I still just can't buy into it. He's missing something that he had last year. Maybe he's a little hurt and we just don't know about it. Cubs have been on fire. Jordan Montgomery's in a decent spot. Not great. Mitch Keller has been a guy that's been really hard to figure out this season. His last 20 start data looks great. His last 5 start data looks terrible. Tough matchup, 23% K rate for Philly. This is one of those high volatile situations where he could do well, he could get absolutely shelled. With how he's pitching right now, I'd probably lean to the shelled spot, but who really knows there. Shane McClanahan. All right, so versus Baltimore last start, he had 86 pitches. So I think you can expect him to be almost, or fully back to a normal workload. It is versus a tough Houston offense who does have Yordan Alvarez back and Jose Altuve. But McClanahan is one of the best pitchers in the game. So at very low ownership, you should probably consider him. Lucas Giolito. Make sure on DraftKings he has changed for the Angels and then he is going to accept points. I know this morning he was still on DraftKings as a White Sox. So before you play him, make sure they have changed his team and that he will collect fantasy points. So just a little FYI there. Sonny Gray. I think you got to consider him in this matchup. We know the upside that he does have. He hasn't been great lately, but this matchup versus KC is a very good one. However, it is 99 degree temperature, something like that, and wind blowing out, so very, very favorable to hitting. All right, let's check out the good old FanDuel. No surprise, Gosman walking away with ownership, 39%. Bobby Miller next. Musgrove, 10%. Zach Wheeler at 7%. Scherzer is very expensive and at 4%. McClanahan's kind of interesting here. Only 9,900, 3% owned versus tough matchup, but definitely a little interesting. There's a lot of really good ways to go. I think Zach Wheeler at 7% in one of the better matchups on the slate is likely where I'm going to end up going. I also do like Musgrove here. Bobby Miller taking that salary difference is fairly interesting as well. So that's likely where I'm going to go, but we're not totally sure here. I'll have to wait for some more data to come through to really make my choice, but that's where I'm leaning at this point. All right, now let's get into some stacks here. So one thing I will say is that this is a very interesting hitting slate. So we have a Colorado game, but we also have really good hitting weather in multiple spots, and we have, 4 games with 10 plus game totals. So, and with it being such a big slate, ownership is really going to get spread out. Right now, highest owned is with the Minnesota Twins, 55%. Very cheap stack and very, very interesting one. I think all of these guys can hit, have some speed. It's really good hitting weather in KC. Brady Singer doesn't scare me. I think it makes a lot of sense to go here. And quite frankly, I'd be shocked if Minnesota really does stay as the highest owned stack. Cleveland, Tuki Desant just isn't that great. So Cleveland's been hitting well. I think you got to consider them. Tommy Henry isn't that great of a pitcher. Mariners are definitely an offense that can hit, and it's in a better hitting ballpark than their home one, so they are very interesting as well. Colorado, you definitely have to consider. So it's likely JP Sears going here. Still not official. Oakland's been doing that starter thing or opener thing a little bit lately too, so could be that, but could be a lot of different things for pitcher wise. I would expect JP Sears to be the one though, and look, he doesn't scare me. Colorado hits very well, especially in Colorado with mid 80 degree temps, so they're very interesting. The Dodgers is a stack I very much like today. I've already bet Williamson unders. I think he's going to get shelled today. I think they are going very low owned and are very interesting. All right, let's look at the projections now. So we have the Braves as the highest projected. And look, at this ownership, it makes a lot of sense to go to the Braves here. Now, I will say that these two stacks you likely can't fit in unless you're going two very cheap pitchers. This salary is just a bit too high for your stack, but nonetheless, the Brave stack looks very good today. I'm not scared by Hauser. It's warm. The wind's not blowing out today, but it's warm enough that ball is going to carry. Boston versus Webb. Look, Boston hits righties really hard, so I think they're in play pretty much versus any righty. The one thing I had got to bring up is that they're in San Francisco. They're not in Fenway. It's a big downgrade to their normal. I already talked about the Dodgers. I love them. Gausman doesn't really get shelled, so it's hard for me to go to a 5-game stack against him, especially on a 14-game slate. I don't mind, having 1, 2, 3 of those. I probably am not going to 5, though. Cincinnati's been hitting well. Bobby Miller is still a young pitcher. The Dodgers bullpen's not that great. Makes sense to go there if you want to get a little different here. Cleveland. Milwaukee, Braves got Yanni Chirios on the mound. He's not going to go that deep into the game, so you're going to get a lot of bullpen here. You can absolutely make a case for the Brewers. Also, they're in a good hitting environment in Atlanta. All right. Value stack-wise, Twins, all over it. I've already talked about it. I like them. Don't need to keep going on it. KC is an interesting value one. It has that same hitting environment, 100 degrees, wind blowing out. Sonny Gray is a very good pitcher, but doesn't work that deep into a lot of games. So I think they're interesting for sure. Pittsburgh versus Zach Wheeler, and I don't love it, but weirder things have happened. Ceiling play, Houston, McClanahan. Look, he has a 4.57 FIP over his last 5, so, maybe he was hurt prior to going on the IR or IL, and then he came back and he's still not 100% healthy, but he has not been himself lately, so they're in consideration with how good that offense is at such low ownership. Cubs been hitting the ball really well, so you got to consider them too. Another spot where super warm, 100-degree temps, wind blowing out. All right. And that will actually do it today. So we'll go over the implied runs. So we talked about Colorado being an interesting stack. They have the most implied runs on the slate, so you gotta be kind of interested on that. And with that being said, Oakland is right up there. They're going to be a nice little value stack. Freeland is not that great of a pitcher. That Rockies bullpen is terrible. So I think Oakland makes a lot of sense, and we didn't talk about them. They're going to be low owned. Braves are up there, Minnesota, Cleveland, all these guys we talked about, they all look decent. White Sox. I don't love going the Mets, but it is a good hitting environment in that game, so they are in consideration here. So, it's a very interesting slate. That is my take. I definitely am probably going to be stacking one of these teams up at the top. I also do think SD is a little bit interesting just because they've been hitting well and that bullpen isn't great. So if they can get to Dunning early, it could get bloody. But let's hope that happens. Go Padres. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. I will see you back next week. Good luck. Let's make some money. Adios.